Welcome to the Cup of Joe Wrestling Show.
Cup of Joe Wrestling Show?
With Joey Harris. A podcast for the wrestling fan on the go. So take your favorite beverage of choice and join Joey as he takes a look at some of the biggest shows on the WWE Network.
Welcome to the Cup of Joe Wrestling Show. I'm your host, Joey Harris, and we are broadcasting from makeshift studios in the shadow of South Central Virginia. Follow the show on Twitter and Blue Sky at Cup of Joe Pod. Email the show at cupofjoewrestlingshow@gmail.com. You can support the show at paypal.me/cupofjoepod. I am on Cash App and Venmo at The Joey Harris, and of course patreon.com/babykangaroomedia for bonus episodes of the Cup of Joe Wrestling Show, the Joey Harris Super Show, the Green Room, the Book Club Baristas, and so much more. Just $5 a month for hours of extra content. And folks, back again. We have had a run of just fantastic shows. We had the Patreon preview of Tyler and I going over NXT versus TNA Showdown. We had the wonderful Brian Solomon interview. That was just fantastic. And of course, the great Tony Richards last week, wrestling historian, talking about how he became a fan, a historian. So if you've not listened to those, please go back and listen to those. Just a run of great shows. But we're back today doing what we do best, I believe, and that is taking a look at the biggest shows on the WWE Network, as today we take a look at Fall Brawl 95 from WCW. Fall Brawl 95 was shown on pay-per-view on September the 17th, 1995 from the Asheville Civic Center in Asheville, North Carolina. There were 6,600 in attendance. We start out with our intro. Tony Schiavone and Bobby Heenan welcome us to Fall Brawl. They talk about the Giant destroying Hulk Hogan's motorcycle with a monster truck before the show. Brian Pillman versus Johnny B. Bad. Michael Buffer makes the introductions. Bad is extremely popular with the crowd. The bell rings and they drive to a corner. Bad with an arm drag. They trade hammerlocks. Pillman with a side headlock takeover. They both try drop kicks simultaneously. Pillman with a wrist lock, back and forth. Pillman with a snapmare. He goes back to the side headlock. He gets a 2 count into an armbar. Pillman with another snapmare. Bad with a wrist lock. Pillman with a bridge for a 2 count. Pillman with a rear chin lock. He follows it up with a head scissors and a headlock again, and Bad is bleeding. Bad with a side headlock. Pillman shoots off, but Bad goes back to the side headlock. Pillman gets a 2 count. Pillman with a Boston Crab. Pillman punches Bad. He pulls Bad's hair. Bad comes back with a backbreaker for a 2 count. Bad with a modified surfboard. Pillman gets to the ropes. Pillman gets Bad in a corner and hits the back elbow. Pillman runs Bad across the top rope. Bad comes back, and Pillman rolls out to regroup. They trade blows. Bad gets dumped to the outside. Bad runs Pillman into a turnbuckle and comes back with a 2 count. Bad comes back to the rear chin lock. They both go for leapfrogs and collide in the ring, and a double count is going. Both up, and Pillman hits a headbutt. He runs Bad into a turnbuckle. Pillman kicks Bad to the outside. Bad suplexes Pillman to the outside. Bad with a crossbody to Pillman on the outside. Back in, Bad goes up top, but Pillman hits him with a drop kick as he comes off for a 2 count. A powerbomb gets another 2 count. Pillman with a pile driver for another 2 count. 3 minutes remaining. Bad with a slam for a 2 count. Bad with an armbar. 2 minutes remaining. Pillman with a Russian leg sweep into a submission. 1 minute left. Bad won't give up. The arm doesn't fall 3 times. 30 seconds left. Bad hits the Tutti Frutti, but Pillman is under the ropes. The match ends in a draw. They go to sudden death. Pillman attacks Bad. Bad punches Pillman. Pillman lures Bad outside. Bad ran into the barricade. They both go for drop kicks. A double count is going again. Pillman gets a sleeper on. They go down to the mat. Bad fights it. He gets to the ropes. Bad gets a sleeper on. Pillman with a belly to back to get out, and both men are down. Pillman puts Bad on the top rope, but Bad pushes him off and gets a 2 count from a sunset flip. Back and forth. Pillman with a crucifix, and Bad reverses into a Samoan drop for a 2 count. Bad with a Hurricane Rana off the top rope for a 2 count. Pillman with the DDT off the middle rope for a 2 count. Pillman goes up top, but Bad falls up against the ropes. Pillman falls out and hits the barricade. Bad hits a cannonball over the top rope. He gets Pillman in the ring and goes for the Bad mood, but Pillman gets his knees up. He gets a 2 count. Pillman with a suicide dive out to Bad, but both out again. Pillman goes for another dive, but lands on the ropes. Double crossbody, but Bad goes over and gets the pin. That was a tremendous match. Mean Gene Okerlund talks to Ric Flair about his upcoming match with Arn Anderson. Flair talks about the bond that he and Anderson have. He says he's in horseman country. He says he loves Anderson, but he's going after him. Cobra versus Sergeant Craig Pittman. Cobra out first and gives his dog tag to a kid. A private comes out and Cobra yells at him, not seeing that Pittman repels from the rafters and attacks Cobra from behind. The bell rings as Pittman is choking Cobra with an artillery belt. Pittman beats Cobra down. Cobra falls outside and Pittman jumps on him and attacks Cobra. Cobra comes back and slams Pittman into the barricade. Cobra throws Pittman in. Pittman quickly regains the advantage and wins with the code red. A feature on Paul Orndorff being approached by Gary Spivey to regain his confidence. WCW World Television Championship match, The Renegade with Jimmy Hart versus Diamond Dallas Page with the Diamond Doll and Max Muscle. DDP jumps Renegade right away. He gets a quick 2 count. Renegade throws DDP out. He runs Page into the apron. Back in, they trade moves. Renegade with a side headlock. DDP gets to the ropes. Renegade gets a 2 count. DDP chokes Renegade on the top rope. DDP hits a swinging neck breaker for a 2 count. DDP throws Renegade back out. They trade 2 counts. DDP with a shoulder block. DDP with a corner whip, but misses the charge when Renegade moves back and forth. Renegade with a clothesline. Renegade hits a double axe handle for a 2 count. DDP with a twisting DDT off of an Irish whip. He gets a 2 count. Renegade with a roll up for a 2 count. Muscle goes after Hart. Renegade jumps on Muscle. DDP hits the diamond cutter and Muscle holds Renegade's leg so DDP can get the pin and become the new television champion. Tony and Bobby talk about what has happened between Sister Sherri and Colonel Parker. WCW World Tag Team Championship match. The Stud Stable, Bunkhouse Buck and Dick Slater with Colonel Robert Parker versus Harlem Heat, Booker T and Stevie Ray with Sister Sherri. They try to fight before the bell rings. The belts are presented. The bell rings. Slater and Booker start. They drive to a corner. Booker with a clothesline. Slater with a drop toe hold. They trade holds. Stevie tagged in. He slams Slater. He gets a 2 count. Stevie with a side headlock. Buck tagged in. Buck with a wrist lock. Buck with a front face lock. Harlem Heat double teams Buck. Stevie beats down Buck. Booker tagged in and hit a sidekick. He gets a chin lock on. Buck comes back with a shoulder block. Back and forth. Slater tagged in. He hits a modified atomic drop. He follows it up with a swing neck breaker for a 2 count. Stevie with a nerve hold on Slater. Booker tagged in. Slater throws him out onto the steps. Buck in and beats on Booker. Stud Stable get Booker down in their corner. Slater with a pile driver to Booker for a 2 count. Buck comes back in and throws Booker out again. Slater attacks Booker on the outside. Buck chokes Booker down and puts on a rear chin lock. Booker slams Buck into a turnbuckle. Booker misses a corner charge when Buck moves and lands hard on the mat. Slater tagged in. Slater with a belly-to-back suplex for a 2 count. Slater with a knee drop for a 2 count. Slater can't get the pin. Buck tagged in and rakes Booker's eyes. He gets a rear chin lock on Booker. Booker fights out. Booker with a big slam and Slater tagged in. He gets a 2 count. Slater with a Boston Crab and Stevie in to break it up. Buck tagged in. Booker hits a scissor kick and Stevie tagged in. He cleans house. He gets a power slam and Slater breaks up the pin. All 4 men in. Parker and Sherri get in the other ring. They hug and kiss on each other. The Nasty Boys come out and hit Slater with his own boot. Stevie covers and we have new tag team champions. Parker and Sherri are still kissing. Buck and Slater are mad at Parker and Harlem Heat are mad at Sherri. Mean Gene talks to the Stud Stable. Buck asks Parker what is wrong with him. Parker says he's in love with Sherri and he will get them another match and the tag titles back. Parker says he feels young again. We get a Halloween Havoc ad. Tony and Bobby talk about War Games. Mean Gene talks to Arn Anderson. They show a feature on Anderson and Flair. Anderson says he's always called a spade a spade. Flair's messing up, and Anderson says he's a nervous wreck, but this is something that has got to happen. Tony and Bobby then talk about Anderson and Flair. Arn Anderson versus Ric Flair. Anderson out first. He looks all business. Both he and Flair, when he comes out, look serious and yet distracted simultaneously. It takes a while to get started. Other wrestlers are out to watch the match. The bell rings and they circle each other. Flair tries to psych out Anderson. They lock up. Anderson with a drop toe hold. They circle each other again. Anderson with a shoulder block. They shove each other. Flair rolls out to regroup. They circle each other again. They trade wrist locks. Anderson works on the arm of Flair. He chops Flair. Flair with a hammerlock. Anderson counters it. They trade moves and counters. Anderson goes back to attacking the arm. Anderson with a wrist lock. Flair tries to come back. Anderson with an armbar. Flair is still struggling, but he gets out and chops Anderson. That brings the crowd to life. He attacks Anderson's leg. Flair with a corner whip, and Anderson hits a back elbow. Anderson with a sleeper. Anderson with the knee to the back when Flair gets out of the sleeper. Anderson keeps the onslaught on. He goes back to a hammerlock. Flair tries to chop out, but Anderson takes Flair back down. He slams Flair's arm down on the ring post. Anderson with an armbar DDT. Anderson goes back to the armbar. Flair sent up and over, and Anderson goes to clothesline Flair on the apron, but Flair drops down and pulls the ropes, and Anderson falls to the outside. That's worth a shot, so drink up. Flair then hits Anderson with a double axe handle to the outside from the top rope. That's worth another shot. Flair chops Anderson at ringside. Flair guillotines Anderson on the top rope. He stomps and chops Anderson. Flair drops the knee on Anderson. Flair can't get the pin. Anderson comes back with a corner whip and a backdrop. Anderson gets several 2 counts. Flair with a cheap shot. He throws Anderson out again. He goes out and chops Anderson again. Anderson comes back with a backdrop on the outside. Flair comes back with a suplex. Back in. Flair with a big shot to Anderson. He follows it up with a delayed suplex. He gets a 2 count. Flair goes back to chopping Anderson. He gets a 2 count. He foils a sunset flip, but can't get Anderson down. Flair goes in the corner, but goes in the tree of woe. Anderson beats on Flair. Anderson goes for the DDT, but Flair holds on to the ropes. Flair goes up top, but gets caught and slammed off, so take a shot if you're drinking at home. Anderson gets a 2 count. Flair comes back and gets the figure 4 on. Anderson fights it. Flair beats on Anderson's leg and spits on Anderson. Anderson reverses it, so Flair lets go. Flair clips Anderson's leg. Flair goes for it again, but Anderson gets a roll up for a 2 count. Flair goes for a corner whip, but Anderson collapses. As the referee goes to check on Anderson, Brian Pillman gets up on the apron and attacks Flair. This allows Anderson to hit a DDT and get the pin. Tony and Bobby then talk about what we just saw. We get a feature on the main event. They showed the Giant destroying Hulk Hogan's motorcycle. We then get another feature on the Dungeon of Doom and the Giant. They also show Lex Luger joining Hogan's team. Mean Gene then talks to Hogan's team. They are fired up. They insist that they are a team and are united. Main event, War Games. Michael Buffer makes the introductions. The cage is lowered. The Hulkamaniacs Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage, Sting, and Lex Luger with Jimmy Hart versus the Dungeon of Doom. The Shark, Zodiac, Kamala, and Ming with Kevin Sullivan. Mean Gene goes over the rules. If Hogan's team wins, he gets Sullivan in a one-on-one match in the cage. The faces get a great ovation when they come out. Sting starts with Shark. Shark attacks Sting right away. Shark gets Sting down. Sting comes back. He jumps from one ring to the other to attack Shark. Sting slams Shark. Shark comes back. Shark with a bear hug. Sting with a pair of double claps to get out. He gets Shark down between the rings. They trade blows. Sting attacks Shark relentlessly. He gets the Scorpion Deathlock on Shark. The heels win the coin toss. Zodiac in. Sting gets him in the Scorpion Deathlock, but gets double teamed. Randy Savage comes in at the end of the period to even the odds. Ming and Kamala reach through the cage and grab Sting's arm to keep him down. They then grab Savage. Kamala enters the cage. He goes after Savage and Sting. Savage with corner-mounted punches to Zodiac. The Dungeon of Doom is dominating in the cage. Luger enters the cage at the end of the period. He and Savage run Zodiac into the cage. The faces are in control. The heels start to come back. Ming enters the cage. Luger inadvertently hits Savage, and Sting has to break up their fight. Ming takes the faces down. He chokes Luger in the corner. Back and forth. The period ends and Hogan enters the ring. He throws powder when he gets in at the heels. He unloads on the heels. The faces come back. Hogan with corner clothesline to Shark. Bodies are down all over. Zodiac thrown into the cage. Shark thrown into the cage. Hogan puts Zodiac in the camel clutch, and Zodiac gives up. The crowd cheers. Sullivan tries to leave but gets stopped by security. Hogan out and grabs Sullivan and throws him into the cage. He attacks Sullivan. He clotheslines Sullivan and chokes him with wrist tape. Hogan hits the big boot. The Giant comes down. He gets in the cage and attacks Hogan. Hogan tries to fight back. The Giant gets Hogan down and wrenches his neck. Hogan's team comes back and the heels bail out. They call paramedics out. Tony and Bobby talk about what we just saw and sign off from Asheville. We then get our end credits. Final thoughts. A good show. The Pillman Bad match was great, and the show as a whole is worth at least one view. You can follow me on Facebook, Threads, and Instagram at TheJoeyHarris. If you like the show, please leave a review on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, or your preferred podcast app. I would really appreciate it. We can also be found on Spotify and YouTube. Just search for the Cup of Joe Wrestling Show, and don't forget to hit subscribe. Thank you for joining me. This is Joey saying so long from the heart of Virginia.
The Cup of Joe Wrestling Show is a production of Baby Kangaroo Media.